All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great morning. I get an afternoon now, I guess it is 1 p.m. I'm super excited to welcome you all here today and just have you with us. A few people were sharing the chat with me that they're enjoying music. So I hope you guys are coming in with having a good morning. And if not, we're going to take a little time here to learn a little bit more about ourselves, maybe get to know some other people in the group. I have the wonderful pleasure of welcoming Josina Garnham, a UW professional and organizational development consultant who is driven by helping individuals, teams, organizations grow to their fullest potential. Josina is a wonderful instructor and teacher with lots of different experience around just kind of finding your focus and organizational change. And so we're super excited, Josina, to have you here. Thanks so much for walking us through more about essentialism, finding our focus and harnessing our energy. I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away from here.
Thank you so much, Anna, for that really kind, thoughtful introduction. And hello, welcome everybody. It's really, truly a delight to get a chance to be all together. And in that spirit of kind of being all together, if you're able to, and I appreciate that everybody has all kinds of bandwidth issues, both internet and personal bandwidth, but if you're able to put your video on, certainly love to see folks if you're able to do that. Just helps to create a little bit more connection amongst us in this very sometimes disconnected world. So thanks again for the welcome, Anna. Just a little bit about me and why I'm excited to be with you all today. The topic is around finding your focus, and Anna and I were chatting before we got started here that finding your focus is something I love having dialogue with folks about. So really excited to hear from all of you and around some of your ideas and practices, because this is something, though I have been working on and leading workshops on for now a number of years, it still requires a lot of intentional attention for me. And that might be true for other people in this room as well. But I can assure you, I don't always lead a perfectly Zen life where every moment I am purely focused on the task at hand. To me, it's something that is kind of an active practice that requires a lot of, again, intention and kind of balancing. And certainly, for me, and this may be true for others in this Zoom room today too, this particular season of life is offering even more opportunities to kind of find our focus. So that's why I'm here today, and again, really eager to hear from you all around some of the areas that you're perhaps struggling with, areas you're finding successes with, practices that you're implementing. So I really hope we can learn from each other. One thing I would like to invite us to do, you've heard a tiny bit about me, and it looks like we've got, gosh, 109 people here in the room. If you wouldn't mind, just so we can get a quick snapshot, we're not going to be able to read and acknowledge every single person that's here today, but go ahead and put in the chat just the name of your team, department, unit, whatever, however you identify. And if you're coming from one of our, well, obviously everyone's coming from some campus, but if you're coming from UW-Bothell, Tacoma, Seattle, many of our medical centers, just go ahead and pop that in the chat so we can just get a quick glance, yeah, who's in the room. And as you're kind of monitoring that chat, those are all flying in. I also just invite you to take a moment to kind of page through. You can look at all our different screens, and perhaps you're seeing a friend or colleague that you know from our various areas around campus. I know I certainly am. So lovely to see people from just all across the University of Washington. Great. So we'll let those keep rolling in, and again, keep welcoming everybody. In that spirit of welcoming folks and kind of setting our context and tone for our time together, what I want to invite us to do is to do a little bit of a check-in here. And again, just so we can help to kind of understand where we're all coming from, I want to invite you to share one word that describes how you feel when you're distracted. So this is a state that we are not aiming to be in. And I'm going to invite you to use this menti.com platform, maybe a little bit different than Poll Everywhere, which folks might be familiar with. So you can either just escape out of your Zoom window and open a new browser, or just grab your phone if you've got that handy and open up a window there. So you'll just type in menti.com give folks a moment or two to do that. And then you'll see at the very top here, we've got a code. So you'll type in this code 2133-5147. People are on the move. And we'll just give a moment or two here to see what kind of words we are rolling in with. Great. And yes, if you're not able to access the website, you can just put your contributions into the chat too. I'm seeing someone stressed. And so the website is menti.com. It's at the top of my screen there. Great. Wonderful. All right. So clearly what we're seeing is when we feel distracted, we feel perhaps overwhelmed. So each of the words, the size of the words are representing the frequency that we're seeing this. So seeing lots of commonalities here. Feeling anxious, overwhelmed, unproductive, frustrated, scattered, stressed. We heard that again in the chat too. I'm loving this scatterbrained. That resonates for me, sometimes a little crazy, pulled, spacey. I want to just make sure we can also recognize some of these ones that aren't as familiar, or not as familiar, but as coming in with as many frequencies. Kind of out of it, lonely, scared, yeah, unconnected. Great. Not great that we feel this way, but great for sharing your contributions. Yeah, so when we are feeling really distracted, we get this sensation of just overwhelm, stress, right? Sense of anxiety. And so we want to just take some of those feelings and just kind of put them aside, okay? So I'm going to move us along here to our next slide. Maybe I need to, well, let me switch to the next screen. Just bear with me for one moment. And then we'll get to the next one, which I'll give you a hint. Will be in the same website and also same code. But this time I'm going to invite you to share what you feel like when you feel focused. So again, just go back to menti.com, same code. If you're already in the website, it should allow you to just remain in there and just share how you feel when you feel focused. And let those roll in. Great, so we get this sense of productivity, accomplishment, feel happy and powerful, energized. Yeah, on top of the world, I love that. In the zone, satisfied. You're in the groove, maybe you're feeling groovy, I don't know. Flowing, great. Just pop in the chat. Yeah, and also seeing in the chat, productive, engaged. Great, I love the word engaged. Wonderful. All right, let's see, what else are we seeing? Zeroed in, awesome. Yeah, so keep entering those in. And as we're kind of absorbing this sense of productivity, accomplishment, energy, happiness, again, kind of think about those feelings and sensations that we get when we're feeling distracted and stressed and overwhelmed. Put those aside and try to absorb in all this energy from all 100 and some odd people that are sharing their sensations of being really focused. So this is really the aim of our session today, right? Is to try to kind of harness more of that energy of when we feel focused. So thanks for sharing those contributions. I'm going to go ahead and stop there for now. And Anna, I can share those out with folks later on as a follow-up, if that'd be helpful. So that's really our hope for today, is just harnessing more of that energy so we can be focused. Now, let me share the rest of my slides here. Whoops, not there. That's the end. Hold on one second. That was funny. All right, let's go from here. Okay, folks seeing my slides okay? A slide with just a little diagram on it? Yeah, great, thank you, Anna. Okay, so, you know, when we think about kind of harnessing that energy, sometimes when we're feeling distracted, our energy might feel like it's disparate, right? Kind of scattered all over the place. And our goal here is really to channel that positive energy towards, you know, the goal or outcome we're working towards. So a couple of questions for you, and this comes from the author Greg McKeown in his book, Essentialism. So I'll just share these questions that he poses as kind of invitations, and if any of these, as I'm sharing them with you all, resonate for you, go ahead and put them in the chat. Like, what, this really strikes me. This stands out for me. So have you ever found yourself stretched too thin or feeling both overworked and underutilized? Have you ever found yourself majoring in minor activities? Sometimes I feel like that as I'm moving through emails. You ever feel busy but not productive? Like you're always in motion but never really getting anywhere. Yeah. So these sensations can, really be those detractors to how we're managing our energy. Yes, and I'm seeing a lot of great comments in the chat. Yes, yes, yes. The challenge of constant task switching, right? Really distracting. I'm feeling always like we're stretched too thin. Yeah. Email is a big cause of some of these challenges, definitely. Yeah. Great. Thank you for sharing those additions. Right, and at any given point in time, we've probably all found ourselves resonating with one of these topics. And our purpose together today is really to think about, can we notice that? And then can we find a place to change? So this is, I would call this a high-level agenda for our time together today. We're going to spend a little bit of time kind of understanding how we can notice and pay attention to how we're spending our time. And then ultimately get a little bit more agency and control over our very precious commodity, which is our time. Kind of get some tools and practices for how we can more effectively strategize our time, as well as some practices that you'll generate together. Does that sound good for everybody? A little bit of the what we'll be covering in our 90 minutes together. And this is a bit of the how. So I think about all the people that are present here today as part of our learning community, right? We're here, I've got some ideas about this, but I can assure you I don't have all the ideas. As I said right from the get-go, it's something, it's always a challenge and something I'm constantly, practicing. So really want to learn with and from each other. And we've got a couple breakouts to help us to do that. And so what I'm going to invite you to do, and I want to invite us all to do, is to share what's true for you. Share your practices, share, your experiences, knowing that, how you may most effectively manage your work and your time won't necessarily work as great for somebody else based on their roles and responsibilities, but share what's true for you and listen and respect what's true for others. As we're sharing candidly with each other, please make sure we're maintaining any sense of confidentiality. And then lastly, in that spirit of finding our focus, as much as possible, if we can, minimize any potential distractions. So I know for me, I was like, okay, I need to really focus. I'm going to turn off my email, got my cell phone off, and I'm feeling, really ready to be with you all today. So take a moment to do that for yourself. I also recognize that people are probably Zooming from meeting to meeting. If you need to take just a moment to take a breath, do that as well. So just a little bit on the context of how we arrive at this situation where we're feeling like we really are needing more focus in our lives. Herbert Simon is a psychologist, and so he said back in 1971, the wealth of information, and I've added in this other words, the other language, and choices and decisions, et cetera, means a dearth of something else, a poverty of attention. And I think, that was 40 years ago, more than 40 years ago, or I guess exactly 40 years ago. This has only become more acute. And certainly in this particular season of our lives, when our work and our home lives are, for many of us, just even more integrated than they have ever been before, there's a lot more opportunity for distractions. And again, means this poverty of attention. Someone had mentioned in the chat, gosh, email feels like it can be so overwhelming. In a book called Indistractable, the researcher near, let's see, I'm looking at my bookshelf, Eyal, E-Y-A-L, he said that the average professional receives up to 100 emails a day. And so if you're spending even just 1 minute on that email, much less emails that might require a couple of minutes, we have hours worth of distractions, right, that are kind of coming at us. And again, that isn't counting all the other pieces that we're kind of balancing with our home and work lives. I heard a great expression the other day that we're not working remotely, but rather we're living at work. And that felt very true for me. I'm not sure if that's true for you as well. Great. And so the consequences of living in this poverty of attention is that we spend about half of our time with our mind on the task in the work context, and about half of our time off someplace else, right? And so as we saw in our word cloud, when we are distracted, when our mind is drawn off the task, we're not productive, and we're not showing up with as much energy and flow as maybe we'd like to. And so this data that I'm sharing with you right now comes from, it's pre-pandemic. So this is even before we started living in this, living and working in this kind of new and different way in the last year or so. So we've got some real challenges up ahead here. So in order to help us kind of mitigate some of those challenges, I want to introduce to you a lens, kind of a model for us to think about how we spend our own time, right? And so you can see this pretty simple 4-box model around urgency and importance. And this comes from Stephen Covey, the kind of thought leader of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so I'll walk you through each of these 4 boxes. And if it's helpful for you, make a little 4-box model for yourself to start to think about, I want to have a new lens, a new assessment of how I'm viewing my day-to-day work tasks. We've got first, those that are both urgent and important, right? These might be different, like a crisis, a fire that needs to be put out, deadline-driven projects, something that you've really got to, again, maintain focus on because you're preparing for a big presentation or a report to submit or something along those lines. Those are in that urgent and important category. I'm going to walk us down to not important and urgent. This is oftentimes characterized by lots of different interruptions. It might be a phone call, an email, a ping on Teams, or whatever other platforms you might be using to stay connected with your colleagues. I would like to characterize this third quadrant as oftentimes other people's urgent things, right? They're not necessarily urgent for you, but they're urgent for them. And so suddenly, unless we're being really discerning and mindful of our time, those can migrate up into quadrant 1 for us. And then we've got quadrant 4. This tends to be, again, this is the not important, not urgent. And this can oftentimes be busy work. Maybe it's some escape activities, tapping into social media. Sometimes we need to do some of those activities to just decompress a little, but these are, not urgent, not important. I don't know if you all get lots of generic emails about learning opportunities, things like that, right? Listservs, some of those might fit for me in that not important, not urgent. And then lastly, let's come up to quadrant 2. So this is the area that's important but not urgent, right? And let me highlight that it's really important. This is our area of strategic planning, of thoughtfulness, of particularly now kind of building more resiliency, thinking about what is it that we're going to be, what is this new phase of our work life going to be like together? It's the domain of relationship building, really strategically taking time to build rapport amongst your colleagues, amongst your team members, particularly, if those of you who are in management or leadership positions. Yeah. So this is the area that we really want to be spending our time in, right? It's in that urgent and not important area where we can really be in that preparation, thoughtful, reflective mode. Boxes, quadrants 1, 3, and 4 are probably where, at least in my experience, I see people spending the most of their time. And that's in part because our neuroscience, we're actually hardwired to get a little rush of dopamine every time we solve a problem, right? And so these quadrants 1, 3, and 4 are really kind of alluring to us. We're like, oh, well, I could respond to that email, or oh, I could take care of that phone call, continue working on that proposal or what have you. And, when we do meet those small successes, we get that little rush of dopamine, which is just how our brains are wired to work. And I share that with you because then we can bring some attention to that, right? We can bring, again, some intentional attention to this idea so that we can be in a place of a little bit more agency when we're noticing that. Is that what's most needed right now? Do I need to be kind of solving this problem? And sometimes that's definitely the case. Or, do I need to figure out a way to kind of migrate more to that quadrant 2? Questions on this model? Probably a lot of you have seen something like this before, or maybe this exact model. Any questions here on this? Feel free to take yourself off mute or put it in the chat, and we'd be glad to take a look at that. Anna's monitoring the chat with me. Okay. So what I want to invite us to do is to just do a little data collection. So you've got some information now about what each of these quadrants represents. And I want you to think a bit maybe about your day so far. Maybe it's about kind of a typical week, right? And take a moment to think about which quadrant do you spend most of your time in? And the way we'll do a little data collection is at the top of my screen, or at the top of your screen, you should see a little green bar that says you're seeing my screen. And right next to that, a view options little black box with a down arrow. Click on the down arrow, and that will drop down an annotate menu. So go ahead and select the annotate toolbar. Do we have that, Anna? Maybe we don't have that as an option.
It should be turned on as an option.
Yes, I'm not seeing that either, Heather. Well, that's okay. Yep, I'm not seeing it.
Might be an error on my side for security. Maybe we just use the chat for that. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Yeah. So instead, yep, no worries. Can we, instead of putting our little stampers on each of these blocks, just go ahead and type in which of the quadrants you spend most of your time in. 1, 2, 3, or 4, and we'll just get a quick little glance at the data as it's coming in through the chat. So 3, 1, 1, 3, 4. Great, seeing lots of 1s and 3s. Great. Yeah, feel free to let those keep rolling in. Yes, and we're seeing 1, 2, anyway, they're rolling in so quick. See a few people sharing quadrant 2, so that's great as well. And it looks like some in order, right? 3, 2, 1, 4, that's great. So keep letting those roll in via the chat, and thanks very much for sharing those contributions and your flexibility there. So we think about using this just simply as a tool for noticing. Again, is this where I really want to be and where I need to be spending my time right now? Just taking that moment to kind of slow things down and to be perhaps a little bit more intentional. And recognizing, of course, as I said before, there are times where we need to be in that, putting out fires, solving problems place. And, we need to make sure we're balancing it across all 4 quadrants as well. So thanks for sharing how you're spending your time. I also invite you to think about your team, your organization as a whole. Are you collectively spending your time differently? Perhaps you're more in the quadrant 3, and maybe some other parts of your organization are more in quadrant 2, right? Might vary depending on the type of organization you're in, as well as the type of role you have. So take a moment to think about that. And the next invitation is just a little bit of, again, data around how high-performing organizations tend to spend their time. We're seeing more coming in there. So we're seeing that those that are considered a high-performing organization are represented in bold, and those that are a typical or normal organization are just represented in the regular print font. So we can see here the most high-performing organizations are spending the majority of their time in that strategic planning phase. I did see a question pop in here. How can something that is urgent be unimportant? Right, great question. So that would be something that's more somebody else's urgency, right? I'm emailing you because I want you to do something for me, or I have what is an urgent question for me, but it might not be important to you. That makes sense. I hope that clarifies that. Okay. What I want to invite us to do now is to think about this kind of framework for reflecting on how we're spending our time. And in fact, Linda, your segue was so perfect. Oops, I want to go there first. What we're really going to be turning our attention to now are some of those strategies. And ultimately, I have a few to share with you, but we'll also be getting back into breakouts so that you can share some of your own practices, and we'll collectively kind of harvest all of those when we return. So I really appreciate this quote: who you are, what you think, feel, and do, what you love is the sum of what you focus on. This comes from an author of a book called Rapt, as in rapt attention, R-A-P-T. And ultimately, right, this is where we're turning our attention to now, is ways that we can filter out what we want to focus on. Asking ourselves, is this the right activity at the right moment for the right reason? That's how we have kind of some strategic filters on what we're oftentimes bombarded with, so that we can focus on them. Kind of knowing, what is the most essential thing for me to be doing right now. And one quick practice, which if you're willing, I invite you to just take a moment to get centered. This is a practice that, of course, is always available to us. And again, I feel like in this moment in time where we're going from one Zoom meeting to the next, perhaps, or feeling like there's bombarded by new changes, one thing we always do have at our disposal is our own sense of centeredness and groundedness. So if you'd like to join me in this literally 5-second exercise, I invite you to either keep your camera on or off. You can either close your eyes or kind of cast your gaze down slightly, and just extend your posture. I know for me, I'm always kind of getting my shoulders crunched up. So for me, I might just roll my shoulders back for a moment. Take a breath there. And then just invite you to extend your awareness about an arm's length in front of you and an arm's length behind you, and then just to your left and right. Maybe take a breath there and just feel settled. If you need to take one more breath, and smile. And as you're ready, if your eyes are closed, go ahead and open them up. If they're open or cast down, can just come join us again. And hopefully you get this very brief little gift of our time. And know that this is always available to you, right? To help us, even just those few seconds, to refocus, like, is this what I need to be doing right now? I'm faced with a decision. Should I just go with my gut and make it right now, or just take a moment, maybe a breath or three, so that I can feel like I'm in a better place to make that decision. When I think about a decision like that, how it's going to impact my time, my workload, things like that. So that's one, quick practice that's always at our disposal, and yet oftentimes easy to be forgotten when we're feeling particularly stressed. And the other one is a lens, a different way of kind of thinking about mindset shift around how we spend our time. And again, I mentioned earlier this book, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. The whole purpose of his philosophy, his book practices, is about living by design and not by default, right? So that we can distinguish between the trivial many and the vital few. So we know what's the most essential thing. And so we won't be going through like a huge workshop on this topic. I'll touch on a couple quick things, but certainly I recommend this book highly. I think it's a really valuable resource, and have been using it with managers and leaders that I work with over the last couple of years, and generally found it to be really quite powerful. Yeah, thanks, Sterling. It's a great book. I think you just finished reading it, so you can add any other recommendations or any of your great tips from there. So thanks. So just really briefly, McKeown talks about essentially a 3-step model. And so I'll just touch on these so that you get a sense about, what's happening. One is explore and evaluate. So this would be some of the things that we've done today, kind of looking at, okay, I've take a peek at my calendar or take a peek at all the different things that I have going on in my life from that lens of, quadrants 1, 2, 3, 4. How am I spending my time? Is that where I want to be spending my time? Is this, again, for the right activity, for the right reason, at the right time? Also, in that first part of the model, looking at what are the trade-offs that are inherent in anything that we do. If I'm saying yes to this, what am I saying no to? I know this is something that has been very present for me lately. If I'm saying yes to another project, more work, in this instance, that's meant that I'm saying no to maybe helping my daughter with her math homework. I have a 2nd grader. Is that the right, the right activity at the right time? Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So just giving us a chance to kind of think and evaluate about that. We move into the eliminate part. So this will be some of the things that we can be exploring today. What are the things that you can say no to? What are the ways that we can set some boundaries? In the Essentialism book, McKeown offers, I think, like 13 different ways you can say no. So if that's something that is a challenge for you, that's a great resource. And then lastly, we move into the execute. And so this would be truly where the invitations are for you after this session. What are the things that you want to take action on as a result of this short workshop? Of course, these are really challenging, but ultimately kind of most pragmatic. It's where we're actually editing, uncommitting to different activities. I do want to just share with you a couple of other quick practices, and I'm not going to talk about all of them. They are coming out in a handout to you, but just one or two that I want to call out. And that is particularly around the second bullet, creating some rituals for starting and ending our work periods, right? And that can be your work day or like a focused work period. Like, okay, I'm going to budget 2 hours on this project or an hour on this project, and then I'm going to bring it to a close. And for me, this can be a ritual, could be pretty simple as far as one of the practices that were shared earlier. Okay, it has come to the end of the day. I am still in my home and my office, and I need to come to some closure here. So I'm going to, close out all the emails that I haven't responded to, get myself organized for the day ahead. What are the to-dos that are migrating forward? And then, part of my ritual is literally just closing my laptop. Same in the morning, just taking a little bit of time. Okay, what's on the day ahead? Great, kind of get that into my headspace, and then I can feel like I'm starting my day. So those are kind of micro rituals, but those do create a little bit of a sense of, I'm doing home stuff and now I'm doing work stuff. So I invite you to think about what's a ritual that's meaningful for you. The other piece that we have talked about, and I know it sounds like a lot of people are practicing this, but is this idea of both time blocking and task batching. And as I have started my work on Essentialism a number of years ago, this has been a real difference maker for me, both in terms of Outlook calendar, and then I also use something called a best self journal. Well, anyway, my journal looks not so dissimilar from what you're seeing on the screen, but to really budget time, for certain activities and hold true to those as much as I possibly can. So if other folks are practicing that, please feel free to put in, some other tips that you might have there. A colleague of mine once said that her calendar looks like a fruit bowl because it's all color coded, and purple is this and green is that and blah blah blah. And I find that that's been a useful practice for me too, to kind of get my tasks organized. And the task batching is, I'll sit down and just do all my emails at once, take a pause on that, come back to them at other points in time, or see I get a bunch of texts on something, I'm just going to take care of them all at once rather than as they roll in. And again, that's been one kind of small practice that's been helpful for me. Love to hear from other folks about how you're either implementing that or trying it, successes, challenges that you've experienced there. So that's the other one. The other couple practices in terms of how we're thinking about strategies to find our focus, is really around, making these intentional choices, being aware of when we're making trade-offs. Trade-offs are inherent in all that we do. I invite you to also, take that moment to kind of slow down, right? Take that breath between activities to help with that transition, to help you feel like you're a little bit more present and mindful of how you're spending your time. I know for me, that has been particularly important as I'm making decisions that impact my time. Let me just slow things down a little and, be aware of, is this something I can say yes to, or should I say no? And then, of course, as people were talking about before, building in time to recharge and re-energize, important always, and again, particularly now, when we are needing to kind of marshal our internal resources as much as possible. So an invitation for you, we've talked about a lot of different things. We've shared a whole bunch of different practices. Again, I invite you to look up into the chat and see some of the other practices that our colleagues and learning community members have shared throughout this brief discussion. Think about what's one thing that will be your focal point. What's one thing you might try in the next 30, 60, or 90 days? Something a little bit different, perhaps. And if you are so inclined, we'd love for you to just put that in the chat. Make that a little bit public, something that you're committing to, something you're saying, this is the one focal point that I'm going to have, one thing that a new practice I'm going to implement. And hopefully that'll make it stick. And if you have a friend or colleague who's attending this session with you, check in with each other over the course of the next 30, 60, 90 days. What's that one thing that you're working on? So if you're so inclined, put that into the chat so we can see those rolling in. Great. So some time blocking, slowing down their mornings. Great. Matching tasks to energy level. I love that, right? Maybe you're a morning person and get all those tasks done in the morning, maybe slow down in the afternoon, or vice versa. Blocking some time for emails. Great. Kind of task batch those. Great. Anything else to add there? Making a rough schedule. Wonderful. Break things down into smaller tasks and schedule those. Yeah, I have found I even need to schedule in my little reminders. Eating more frogs. I love that, Brandy. Great. Turn off our notifications. Wonderful. So feel free to keep letting those roll in. And as we are coming up to the end of our time together, just want to close with this quote. Again, comes from author Winifred Gallagher. Living the focused life is not about trying to feel happy all the time. Rather, it's about treating your mind as you would a private garden and being as careful as possible about what you introduce and what you allow to grow there. And so I hope that as a result of our time together today, sharing some practices, and thinking about our time, our energy, our very precious commodity, we only have 1,440 minutes a day. What are those ways that we want to invite things to flower and grow in our garden in those short moments of our time and lives? With that said, if you do have any questions, comments, concerns about some of the resources we've shared, please, I invite you to take a screenshot of my contact information. I think Anna's going to be sending that out too. Share with me your successes. Love to hear those from you. Share with me your challenges, because I'm sure I've shared those challenges too, or I'm actively challenged by them. So I just welcome you to reach out.